Finally, in SEAL training, there's a bell. All you have to do to quit is ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. If you want to change the world, don't ever ring the bell.
You are listening to the Kill the Quit Podcast Hour presented by Kill Clip Performance Drinks.
Enjoy drinking Kill Clip after sweaty workouts, big rides, full rounds, long days, longer nights, or whenever you feel the need to get back up to full speed.
Kill Clip Performance Drinks for Warriors. Ignite, endure, recover. And now, Mark Zinno.
Welcome into another episode of Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Cliff. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. This week's guest has placed second at the CrossFit Games in the team division with his wife in 2014 and 2018. He was a running back at Western University, and he trains at Invictus Fitness, and he is also legally blind in both eyes. He is Sam Dancer here on Kill the Quit. Sam, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Man, thanks for having me. When you read all that stuff like that, it kind of like makes me think for a second about who I am. It's like, whoa.
Well, you also own a CrossFit gym in Illinois.
I live in Coronado, California right now, and we're here in the San Diego area training for the CrossFit Games with our team. And I own a gym in Quincy, Illinois, which is where I'm from.
All right, so you have this business and you're competing and training and everything else, but let's go back to the beginning, because even though you're only 31 years old, CrossFit isn't something that like kids grow up and go, I want to be a CrossFit athlete. You know, I mean, it's a relatively new thing. So talk me through your early childhood and how you all got started.
Yeah, I mean, you're just now starting to see the sport develop to a point where younger athletes or kids, if you will, are able to look at that and say like, hey, that's something I want to be. And at the time that I was a child, that wasn't an availability to me. So what I wanted to be was a professional football player. And so football was a big part of my life growing up. I played hockey as well. I played hockey for like 13 years, but mostly, and I played other sports as well. I played some soccer, played some basketball, but the majority of my focus and attention growing up was mostly on the sport of football, and generally speaking, the some arts, like in the realm of ceramics and some design stuff, and a little bit of drawing and painting, but mostly ceramics and like 3D design type stuff. And football had the majority of my attention until I graduated college from Western Illinois University.
Let me ask you a question though. Football and art. I'm sure the guys on the team didn't let you live that one down.
I didn't get much grief from anybody. It was
really?
such a a unique combination that both parties, both the art department and the football department, were so intrigued by it. So the art department had really never had this big meathead as a art major before, and there hadn't been too many football players that were majoring in art, and everyone was, for the most part, was just really intrigued and interested in, the mind of this, kind of dualistic, person. This, you don't see many people that take to, this aggressive contact sport, as well as equally to take to this very, delicate, kind of thought-provoking, maybe, kind of associated a little bit with a little bit more feminine side. So you have this incredibly masculine, take on with the participation in football, and then you have this more delicate, more feminine side that's participating in, the expression of their mind through the arts. and I didn't catch much grief for it, thankfully. I caught enough grief for various things in high school that maybe God or the universe or whatever was a little bit more kind of cleared the way for me in college. Like I said, I kind of struggled a little bit in high school with getting bullied and beat up and picked on and all that. And and maybe just having some courage through that, nature kind of laid it down for me in college and allowed me a little bit easier path.
Now, that's interesting because so let's go back to the bullying thing for a moment, because usually kids take that out in one of two ways, right? I mean, and I'm no psychologist, but this is just kind of what you see through experience. Especially if you're playing football and you get bullied, you take that, you internalize that, and then it comes out in the form of aggression on the football field. And it makes you a very good football player. Or it makes a lot of sense because you know how they say, like, geniuses are also a little bit kind of, quirky. And I think the art, or, when you dive into something that mentally changes your focus, that's another way of kind of redirecting that bullied energy that you have that you need to expel. So I think it makes sense kind of both that you are dabbling in something that challenges your mind as well as something that challenges your body.
Yeah. And I can't imagine life without. I oftentimes during my time in high school, I was definitely capable of recognizing that, and it would make me sad. It would really bother me that I had these things. I had football, I had art, I had my family, I had a brother, these two loving parents, I had friends, for the most part, and I was still struggling to find acceptance, and I was struggling to find acceptance because I was getting my ass kicked, and people were making fun of me, even though I was accepted. And I would oftentimes think to myself, like, oh my gosh, like what if you didn't know how to express yourself or have that ability, or know that you could, to express yourself with whatever medium it is, more for me specifically with art, and then to be able to also evacuate some of that pent up anger that you have in your body and to be able to express that with your physical body and in a contact sport. Like I had it really good for somebody who was getting, picked on and all that stuff. And so it would oftentimes really it'd make me sad because I'd think about other people who were probably going through a similar situation, similar feelings, and didn't have anything that allowed them to keep themselves together.
Sure. Do you mind telling us why you were picked on, why you were bullied? Do you have any answer, or is it just because you were a small kid?
Gosh, looking back at it, I don't have a lot of, the only thing I can really think of is the school that I went to. It was a small school. It was a rarity in this small school for there to be a 8th grader or a freshman, if you will, that was talented enough to be able to compete with the seniors. So usually it's kind of small school, small kids, like you got to kind of wait your turn. And I was a little small when I came in. I put about 100 pounds on in high school, but I was a fierce football player even at a really young age. So I'm a freshman in high school. I don't weigh very much, but I'm a wild man, and I'm aggressive, and I'm not afraid. And I was competing with these seniors, and a lot of times I was kind of embarrassing them, and I don't think they liked that. And the only way that they knew how to react was to try to destroy me in places that they knew I couldn't destroy them, or I was helpless. And a lot of times that was in the hallways or the locker rooms, or they could never do anything to me out in the field when there's coaches present, basically, people to keep an eye on everything to make sure that everything's within the rules and the spectrum of football, and you're not bringing some crazy stuff into practice that's from school. It's hard to really detect that.
Sure.
So I was able to get away with not being so angry, because I got to get a lot of that anger out in the field, and then any other emotions or feelings that I was having, I got to express those in my art class, man. So at a very young age, I was capable of accessing a very broad range of emotions. And because I enjoyed art so much, and I had ways to express myself, and I was sure of it, and I was confident in those things, and I enjoyed those things. So it allowed me to really, like, in most circumstances, when you think of like bullying and all that, it really kind of, I don't know, I think it probably sets a lot of people back.
Sure.
And for me, it didn't set me back at all. It really accelerated a lot of things for me that helped make sense of where I'm at today and what life is today and all that, yada, yada.
He is Sam Dancer, our guest this week on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Cliff. Sam is a CrossFit athlete, CrossFit gym owner, former collegiate football player, and he joins us here on Kill the Quit. All right, so one more question about the childhood bullying thing. If you could embarrass them on the field, how come you weren't able to hold your own when they were bullying you? Is it just that, like, there was 5 of them and just you, or?
Yeah.
Okay,
Usually right. it was kind of like a group. And honestly, a lot of, like, it would be like, a group of them couldn't attack me on the football field. You just couldn't get away with it.
Right,
like,
sure.
Like, if 5 guys came after me, on the football field, it would look really weird.
Sure, yeah.
Especially as like you're out there trying to tackle the ball carrier, so like it just, they wouldn't be able to get away with it. But in the hallways when people aren't watching, or in the locker rooms when people aren't watching, that was their time to, whether it be a verbal or on the buses. I remember the buses when we traveled, like on, road games and stuff, that would always be a pretty tough time for me. But it was short-lived, man. It was only a couple years in high school. I made it through. I'm alive. I'm good. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I learned a lot from it. I'm glad I had those experiences and learned how to handle them at a very young age. And
Ever experience fear with it? I mean, were you ever afraid?
No, I was never afraid. If I was afraid, it was just from, and this is going to sound really bad and really weird, but it's so real. The only time I was ever afraid is when I would get to a point where it just sucked so much that I would think to myself, it would be a lot easier if I just wasn't here. You'd start having, and maybe I'm having a tough time even saying them just because of what we've done to them culturally, the words, but just like having kind of suicidal thoughts and just kind of playing around with the idea that,
sure, yeah,
what the ease of life would be if I didn't have to deal with this or this person or this thing. And, that would be the only time it would get hard. And I was very present for those conversations and talks for myself. And I was very capable of recognizing, that I was having that internal dialogue about that type of thing with myself. And I would easily, be able to kind of, not easily, but be able to just redirect my focus and just be aware of the position and situation that I was in, and start doing the necessary things to make alterations to my life to ensure that, I wasn't regularly spending time in these moments where I was talking to myself and considering that not being here would be a much
option,
more pleasant, or better option. So I just, I had to talk, do the things, and then you go to work.
sure.
And, and I went to work. But there's definitely times where I'd be afraid, and it would be afraid for my life, because I'd start considering that life would be better if I wasn't present in this physical, in the physical realm, that life would be better in just the spiritual realm.
Gotcha. All right. Your collegiate football career, running back at a major college, and you get to play college football, which was an amazing experience. Did that not end because you wanted it to end, or were you hopeful for the next level after that, or what?
Man, gosh, I wanted to play professional football, And I didn't have like a tough time finishing football up. Like some people have a tough time hanging it up. And all college football players think that they're going to play professional football. I wanted to, but when I started really like doing the math on it, like I was figuring it out pretty early that, you know, I wasn't going to go play professional football. I had a lot of the characteristics that you'd look for, but they're looking for all of the characteristics. And, you know, I'm probably a little short, probably a little slow, you know, maybe not even at the right position for my, you know, my
physical stature.
Yeah. You know, probably looking back at it now, probably would have been better off just like, you know, if I had the ability to know these things, to like probably just stay a little leaner and not so. I was a big guy. I was 275 pounds when I played football.
Wow.
I probably would have been better off being like 215 and go playing like, you know, outside linebacker, like safety or something like that. Yeah, nonetheless, man, I didn't have like a great collegiate career. I had a lot of fun, man. I met some awesome people. I played some hard football with some amazing athletes, and was very injury kind of ridden career, a lot of concussions, broke my leg a couple times. I had a really tough time getting healthy, and every time I would get healthy, I was such an aggressive football player, man, that my body just couldn't sustain the way that I played. I looking back, I needed to spend more time understanding the actual game of football and probably studying, you know, the offense and the defense, and not just thinking that this sport was all about being aggressive and making the biggest contact you could possible. So I kind of like was self-destructive in that regard, because of the way I played and my lack of understanding for the sport. Even though I've been playing it my whole life, the way that I played was the way that I thought football was supposed to be played, which is just you go around and impose your will onto other men, sure, until they quit and people give up. And I didn't have a tough time, you know, playing around with the idea of like, all right, like, I'm going to try to go to the league now. And at the end of my college career, I was like, all right, so football is not an option for me. It's just my body was at that time, it was broken still. Like I think my left leg was in a boot and crutches. When I did like my little combine day, I did like that bench press thing. Mm-hmm. You know, that was all I was really healthy enough to do.
How many did you do?
I did like 43 reps or something
wow.
like that. Yeah, it was a lot.
That is insanity.
But I knew I wasn't in the health or the condition, or did I even have the ability to go play professionally? So I was okay with that. I understood that, even though those were dreams and stuff. I'm glad I was capable of just like letting that go and then moving on to the next thing. A lot of times, especially with football, man, a lot of athletes have a really hard time redirecting their lives, and you haven't been taught how to even live. You've only been taught how to play football.
Sure.
So it screws a lot of people up.
Gotcha.
And I feel very fortunate that I was able to pivot and go a different direction. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew it wasn't going to be football.
All right. Well, put it on pause because we're going to get to that when we come back. What's next for you? And when you develop keratoconus, which left you legally blind, we'll discuss that coming up next on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff.
You're listening to the Kill the Quit podcast hour, presented by Killcliff Performance Drinks.
Killcliff, performance drinks for warriors to get you up, get you through, and get you back to full speed.
And now, back to the show with host Mark Zinno.
Welcome back to Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff. This week's guest is Sam Dancer. Sam is currently a CrossFit gym owner, and he placed second at the CrossFit Games in the team division in 2014 and 2018 with his wife, who is also a CrossFit athlete, and he is also legally blind. We'll get to that in just a moment. We last left off with Sam finishing his football career in college and on to the next phase of his life. So where does that take you?
Oh man, it takes me back home to Quincy, Illinois, where I'm not really doing anything. I'm kind of just like I'm not doing just anything. I'm just taking my time to kind of figure out like, hey, what is it that you want to do for the next segment of your life? And where do you want to go? And who do you want to be? Just, start asking yourself all the questions, like, where are you going to go? Who are you going to be? Like, who are you? Where are you? What is this? All these types of things, and starting to address those. And I was very fortunate that at the time I had a manager named Jason Brown when I was working sales at this rental company. He would also kind of, when I'd go talk to him and talk about who I am and what I am, where I want to be and where are we and all this stuff, he would just be a good listener and he would he would ask and a good question asker too, and he would ask me those things and we'd start figuring out that I really enjoyed the way that the body worked, and I really was excited and passionate about sharing how amazing our physical bodies are with people. Like, that got me out of my kind of what's the word? Not reclusive. I wasn't reclusive. I just wasn't.
Comfort zone?
I'm not. I'm just not I'm a pretty quiet guy. I'm not a very social person, but if you start talking about like the spirit or just like the body and how it moves, or the mind and how it thinks, I just get all excited about it. And I start like becoming a different person, or coming out of my shell, if you will. So we were able to start identifying a lot of these things that got me like that. And Jason and I were able to come to this idea that it'd probably be a good idea for me to just like to open a gym. At the time, it wasn't like a CrossFit gym or any type of gym. It's just like, hey, you need to open like a fitness center, a place where people can basically come play and learn how the body works. And so he helped me write a business plan and all that stuff. And he's like, you need to start doing this stuff. And so started coaching some people for free in a park, and did that for a while. Lots of people came through, and this sounds really, kind of pompous and stuff, but I could tell people enjoyed my charisma and the time that they spent with me because they were telling me. And it was like, they were basically like, hey, you should do something more with this. And it's like, it was a lot of cool affirmation that I was able to receive for like, oh wow, that's great, because this is what I want to do. So it's really cool that what I want to do is matching what these people like and what these people want. And so we're kind of bridging this trinity between people's needs, my passion, and my talent. And we're finding this sweet spot for which is today Q-Town CrossFit. And yeah, man, it's.
But how did you find CrossFit though, per se? Then.
I mean, I've always kind of been into fitness, right? So like, if you're into fitness, I don't think it's gonna like, especially now that CrossFit is like a definable thing. I don't think it's gonna like take you long to kind of hear about it or have someone tell you about it. So I'm into fitness. I dig fitness. My cousin Taylor is a dude. She's amazing. She was a cheerleader at Louisville. She's a Marine. Yeah, she's a Marine. A tough one too, man. She's like Taylor, even though she was like younger than me, when it came to like what she could do with her physical body, she was like my hero and like my idol. And I wanted to look like, I wanted to look like her. That might sound weird for a man to say you want to look like a woman, but like she had all these muscles and she just looked good, dude. And she was strong, and I liked what she was capable of doing with her body when it came to sport. So I had her, and she did CrossFit. And so I was so attracted to, how well she moved and how strong she was and how she looked, and that it was like a no-brainer to me. It was like, okay, whatever you do, I'll do.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she was always on me about it, to do it and try it. And I was like, just like that, I was like, okay, deal. I'll do it. Whatever you're doing, I'll do.
Interesting. All right. So,
and she's a stud. She went to like regionals and stuff, and she doesn't do as much of it now. She could literally do whatever she wants when it comes to, fitness type stuff. But she's married, and she's gonna be a mama, but she was and still is a stud.
Pretty amazing stuff. All right. So, at what point in time do you lose your sight? Again, it's called keratoconus. When do you develop it? What's the onset of it? And
Yeah.
what was that whole process?
So that kind of started in college a little bit on the tail end of my football career. I was just having, it started with my coach. I used to catch everything, man. Like if it hit my hands, I was bringing it in. And out of nowhere, it felt like just one day, like I couldn't catch the ball anymore. It would just be like bouncing off my head, bouncing off my shoulder pads, going through my hands and everything, man. And I also noticed I started like, I always say that I wasn't a great student, and I don't think my wife always like gets upset. I think at that, like I'm not stupid or anything. It's not like I'm not intelligent, but I wasn't a great student. And I always sat in the back, and I never really participated. And I started noticing that I was having this kind of subconscious urge to move closer to the whiteboard or the chalkboard, because I wasn't able to see, and I was like getting these headaches, and I was squinting all the time. And my coach told me, he's like, "Dancer, you need to go get your eyeballs checked." And I was like, yeah, maybe I do. And went and got them checked, and found out I had keratoconus, which is a progressive eye disease. And so I've been experiencing a progressive eye disease since I was probably about 20, 21, something like that.
But so, what's it like? Like, do you feel every single day like your eyesight is deteriorating until you've lost it all?
Some days, yeah. Some days I do. Some days, like,
Did that
a lot
scare
of
the
days
hell out of you?
Sometimes, but not really. After you've had it for like 10 years or so, you kind of like, this has become my new normal. I'm very comfortable with the way that I see. And honestly, when I do see well, it kind of freaks me out. I almost can't even like tolerate it. So when I have a misshaped cornea. That's what keratoconus is. It's basically, just think of the cornea. It just kind of gives up. It starts to relax, and it starts to sag, and it gets misshaped, and it doesn't have a nice contour to it. But my retina is really healthy. So basically, it's like if you had a camera and you were taking a picture, you have the camera film, and all that stuff works fine, but your lens is cracked. Like, images are still going to come through and get put onto that film, but they're not going to look good. But there's still going to be images there. They're just not going to look like what everyone else sees. So, like, it's hard to explain how I see. The best way I have is like, that glass that's in bathrooms.
Yeah.
That you can see through, but it's obviously glass for bathrooms that keeps you from seeing through. Mm-hmm. That's how I see. I kind of just see outlines and shapes and colors. I don't see like, really good details. You can't really see who the person is behind the glass. You can just see about how tall they are and how wide they are and what colors they have on. And you'd be shocked at how much you can really do with that information. I do pretty well for myself. New places can kind of freak me out. Like if the lighting's really off, it can kind of freak me out. I have these prosthetic corneas in my eye, called intacs, and my pupil at nighttime, your pupil in the dark, it grows. So at nighttime, when my pupil gets big, it hits the edges of these rings that are helping me, kind of like they're supporting my cornea. So it's not, the disease isn't progressing as fast. So it's kind of like a wonder bra or a sports bra for my cornea. It just kind of holds them in place.
Wow.
But at nighttime, my pupil gets to about the size of those rings, and I can't see at all. Everything just like starts refracting and has like halos around it, and I see triple, and like it's a pretty wild experience. It's almost like hallucinating. It's a very psychedelic experience, and not always a great one. It's
I can imagine.
It's kind of a heavy trip. It's just like it's heavy in the way that, like, when I have these kind of moments, these, call them, it's kind of like a hallucination. It really is. I get a little, I can keep it together, but like, just imagine being at like a big convention center or a party, or I don't want to say a bar, because I don't really go to bars, but like if I'm with a group of people at nighttime and it's dark and there's some lights on, like I can't see a thing. It's basically like me just looking through a kaleidoscope, and it's hard to kind of like keep myself together, because like you can't see anything. So when you can't see anything, you don't like and there's loud noises, and like, and nobody really, like, there's not a lot of familiarity. It kind of wigs me out sometimes. I don't like completely lose it and like have like these nervous breakdowns or anything. I usually just kind of like grab my wife's hand, or she's really good about it too. She knows like, all right, my husband can't see, and he's probably freaking out right now. And even though she doesn't know how I really see, she can tell how I act, and she knows when I may be struggling to see. And she's really good about like grabbing my shirt or grabbing my hand and just like pulling me close and making sure that like I don't trip on stuff, or that, she can point people out to me, because the worst is when, people wave at you, or they come up and say hi to you, and like I can't see them. And if I haven't seen someone routinely, they're not in like my little database of shapes and colors and noises, and it's hard for me to recognize them. So even my mom, like if I haven't seen my mom for a little bit and she walks by me, like I'm probably not going to recognize her.
Right.
I have to be seeing people regularly every day for me to be able to like recognize who they are from afar.
Mm-hmm. So wait, let me ask you on that note, when you met your wife, when you started dating your wife, could you physically like see her, or was it blurry, or like what?
That's so funny you mentioned that, because the day that I met her, I got eye surgery, and I was supposed to be wearing an eye patch.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know if I was embarrassed about the eye patch, or I just didn't want to wear it, or if I was mad about the eye surgery. Like, I've definitely gone through some phases with my eyeballs, with how I feel about them. and I don't really remember where I was at in that point of my life 5 years ago, but I do know that the day I met her, I was supposed to have an eye patch on, and I can see like when the conditions are right, and if you're close enough, or I squint really hard, I can see pretty much fine. It's just not sustainable for me to squint all the time. Right. And it's not realistic for me to be 3 inches away from somebody's face all the time.
Invading my personal space there, huh?
Yeah. So, but man, yeah, I could still I still see her. I still knew what she looked like, and I told her well, I didn't tell her right after I saw her, but I maybe the day after or something like that, I told her that I loved her and I wanted to marry her.
Did she? When did you tell her that you had this eye disease, that you were legally blind?
Pretty like right away, like up front.
Was she skeptical? Like if you said, "Boy, you're beautiful," was she like, "Nah, you might be lying because you can't really see what I look like"?
I brought it up just because I was moving really fast with this. I was like, yeah, hey, I love you and I want to marry you and spend the rest of my life with you. Let me give you a little heads up on me. I'm blind. I don't really, maybe a couple other things. I don't really have a job, or I love God, or just like all these things, just like giving her some heads up on stuff. And I don't think any of that like really freaked her out or anything like that. But I did let her know just to like, hey, you're dealing with somebody that you're going to have to, if you feel the same way about me, you might have to help me out
from time to time.
You might have to, and maybe you might even have to take care of me. I don't know. Like there could very well could be a day that I can't see very well. And there are times where I need somebody to hold me and just like and guide me through stuff, because I'm just terrified with where I'm at. And
yeah, it makes sense.
And then I don't get like weird anxiety about it. It really sucks, man, not to be able to,
I'm sure
it's helped me a lot, man. It's helped me be able to, be comfortable with not being in control.
Sure. And that's tough.
And that is tough, dude. I'm realizing that with a lot of people, that like when people don't feel like they are in control is when you see the worst sides of them.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And so by me being in situations very often where I am not in control and I'm very much out of control, it reminds me of like being in like a rip current in the ocean or something, like where you just have to let go kind of and just, relax. And if you panic and freak out, it gets worse and worse and worse.
Sure.
So it's taught me a lot, man.
All right, coming up next, we will get into Sam's time in the CrossFit Games and how he and his wife took second place twice in those games. That's coming up next on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Cliff.
You are listening to the Kill the Quit Podcast Hour, presented by Kill Cliff Performance Strengths, proud partner of the Navy SEAL Foundation.
Welcome back to Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Cliff. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. This week's guest is Sam Dancer, two-time second-place finisher at the CrossFit Games in the team division with his wife. He's legally blind. And we last left off with him and his wife finally getting together and meeting up and starting their journey together. But did you know when you first met her that she was into CrossFit, or did she get into CrossFit because of you?
She got into it because of me.
Okay.
She was a professional soccer player, and
like man, professional, when you say like Team USA professional, or like
my wife was literally, this is crazy. My wife is literally one of the best female soccer players that has ever played the game. Like she has won some ridiculous awards, and it's weird for me because I don't know my wife as a professional soccer player.
Okay, so you met her after her career was over?
Well, I met her while she was still playing, but she retired nearly immediately after she met me to get married. And so
really?
She retired. Yep. And she was receiving awards. Like she was almost a national team player for Sweden. She was only a couple months away from that. I kind of messed that up a little bit. She was about to be a citizen in Sweden, so she would have been on the national team for Sweden. She was on the national team for the USA, but I think she like blew her knee out like twice, so she never really got to do anything with that. She was citizen of the year in Sweden, and then she would be like MVP of her leagues and lead scorer and all that stuff. Quite a stud, man. She was. I was just kind of telling her that like, CrossFit's the truth, man, and it's the way. It's like it's what you should be doing for soccer, and it's what I wish I was doing for football, and that's kind of where it initially all started, and we started kind of connecting, and so she got into CrossFit, and she got into me, and we were into each other. And
is she as good at CrossFit as she was at soccer?
Oh man, that's hard for me to say. Probably.
What do you think she would say?
Probably not. I think she was such a dominant soccer player. Like, I think she really got everything that she wanted on the soccer field, and that's not always the case for her in CrossFit. I think CrossFit has been a little bit more humbling for her, probably a little bit more revealing in regards to what areas she isn't as competent as she was or is in soccer. And it's definitely, when I met her, she was a rock star. Like, and then you start to, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but you start to kind of not humiliate, but you start to be humbled by some things. You start to, be able to, you're ashamed of how you do. You start to show some vulnerable emotions, and
right.
And you start to. But who my wife is now, compared to who she was when she retired, and from the time that she started CrossFitting, she is a completely different human, all for the better. So.
Now,
probably not as good at CrossFit, but CrossFit's opened her eyes to who she, kind of helped her open her eyes to who she can be and who she is, and what she is capable of doing and what she's not capable of doing, and just yeah.
Well, so when you guys started training and competing, did you always compete together, or did you compete in your own division and she competed in hers? How does that whole thing come about?
So right when we met, she competed in hers and I competed in mine. So I did individual and she did individual. And then the next year after that, we did team and we got second. And then for 3 years after that, we went individual. I went to the games as an individual. She got really, really close, like 2 or 3 years in a row, like just there. She would always get kind of not screwed, but she has pretty bad overhead mobility. So overhead squats are kind of tough on her, and her knees are kind of beat up just from soccer. So there's some things that kind of keep her from being able to display a full broad range of skill that allows you to qualify for the games. But she got pretty damn close a couple times. I got close a couple times. I went once. And then kind of now we're where we're at now, which was, this past season, we went to the games on a team together, got second again.
Now, how much does she have to? How much help are you allowed at the CrossFit Games because of your eyes? Like, is someone allowed to guide you from event to event, or how does that work?
Man, like I said, I've had this for 10 years. I don't feel like when it comes to sports, for the most part, man, especially this sport, I don't really feel a disadvantage with my eyesight ever, except for maybe when I have to jump up and grab something.
Okay.
So if I have to jump up and grab some rings or a bar, sometimes in the moment that can be a little unsettling, but then I'm just kind of deflect it back onto my training. I'm like, okay, I've been training how to jump up to a bar and rings for years and years and years. And I know that I'm capable of jumping up to this thing and holding on to it, whether I can see it or not. So I don't really need a ton of help. There have been times where like maybe there's some like lines I need to go touch, and I ask that, you know, they maybe point them out to me or have a human being standing on them so I can see them. I'll ask my judges to like, I can't see the monitor,
Right.
you know, so just to tell me like how many calories I'm at. And I wear a watch, so I don't really have to see the, you know, the clock that's on the field of play, and just know where I'm at in space and time and all that. So it's really not that bad, man. The worst part of it a lot of times is just social stuff. You know, people see me trying to see, and what they see looks like an angry person.
Oh, really?
You know, you're squinting. Yeah, you're squinting. You're making a scrunchy face, and it's not a really attractive look. And I got to be better. And well, as a result of trying to be better about that, you just find yourself squinting less. So, which means seeing less, and keeping my face relaxed so I don't give off that that idea to people that I'm mad or angry or I'm going to come hit them in the face.
But isn't it kind of in the actual games? Like, isn't that an advantage? That look at that dude's crazy. Look at him. He's always mad.
Yeah.
You know, is that like a mental edge?
Maybe, but geez, like, and I think most people already know that I'm really crazy, so they don't need the blind guy to throw them off even more.
Why do you still kind of have that same reckless abandon the way you played football when you do CrossFit Games?
Yeah, I'm still kind of like a loose screw a little bit, like just kind of a wild man. I'm not like so reckless or crazy to the demise of myself or others. I just I'm excited.
Does your wife ever have to tell you to chill out or no?
Yeah, regularly.
And do you listen?
Yeah, heck yeah, I chill out. I listen.
That probably is in your best interest all around. Not only during CrossFit Games, just in general.
Yeah, we get along really well, man. Me and my wife have a great relationship and a really awesome dynamic, and she's incredibly supportive, and she allows me to lead, and to be a husband to her, and which is really hard for her to do. She's like, talk about control freaks and just like being in control. Like, she is the absolute queen of that. So for her to allow me to be able to direct our family and trust my spiritual calls is a really cool thing for her to be able to do. It's she's a very, very like her whole life has been control. Her whole life she's been in control, and she's won, and she's dominated, and she's, you know, her way has been the way her entire life, and successfully too. So for her to be able to not be in control and trust, what I say and do for the betterment of us is pretty awesome.
Now, you finished second at the CrossFit Games in the team division, as I mentioned earlier, in 2014 and 2018. Is there a desire to keep going back and keep competing and get that first place? I mean, well, first of all, what was that like when you finished second? Was that a good moment for you guys?
Yeah, it's gosh, it was good and bad and mostly good, like 90% good. There was like some parts of me and us were like, gosh, this is not what we worked for. We wanted to come here and get first. So it was like, some of it was a bummer. But at the same time, when we reflect on it, and even in the moment, we were very happy, and it was a dream come true. And we worked really hard to get there, and it was quite a pleasure to be able to stand up on that podium. as for the question of like continuation, the ultimate goal for my wife and I when I guess when it comes to competing is just to make sure that we're having fun and that we're healthy. As soon as we start to compromise those two things, and we haven't yet, you'll probably start to see us remove ourselves from competing. Now, with that being said, we've got a pretty good understanding on how to keep the body healthy and how to have fun. We're pretty good at that. But there is one reality that we cannot escape, any of us, and that is the reality of time. And the reality of that is that there is only a certain amount of time that the physical body is even, capable of doing the things that that you want it to do. So we're very honest with ourselves when it comes to our training age and our actual age and where we're at in our lives and what's realistic when it comes to us to not only be competitors, but to be competitive. And we're still capable of being competitive in the sport, but we're starting to get to a point in our lives where, like, if we're going to maintain health and happiness, then we're not going to be as competitive anymore. That doesn't mean that we won't compete. It just means, like, it's going to be really difficult for us to have fun and be healthy and go win the CrossFit Games the older we get. So we're still planning on competing. We're competing this year. We're out here training in San Diego. We still plan on being competitive. But there are aspects of our lives that are forcing us to make sure that we're constantly checking in with that, the happiness, the health, and the competitiveness and the competition and whatnot. And she's 35, I'm 31. We want to have children. So, like, I guess there's plenty of time for me to still train and be competitive and compete and all that stuff, and still for her too. But we want to not travel,
Sure.
every other weekend all year, all the time. And we're making the necessary adjustments at the necessary times to be able to still have a successful, fun, healthy season this year, and to still lay the groundwork and make the necessary adjustments to where we're living and what we're doing to be able to make a baby too.
Well, beautiful stuff, Sam. And listen, it's an incredible journey, and obviously, thank you for being courageous enough to share your stories about your youth and what's going on with your eyes. I mean, it's just incredible in and of itself. And look, I know that you've got a passion for CrossFit, and it's kind of what drives you and your wife each and every day. But we certainly enjoyed listening to your story, and look forward to more success in the future. And hopefully, with a couple more attempts, or hopefully one more attempt, you'll get that first place trophy at the CrossFit Games.
Yeah, man, and thanks for having me too. I love getting to, I don't want to say share my story, but I love just getting to be able to share and allow people to be able to maybe potentially identify with some areas of their life with mine, and for me to be able to share with those people that man, life is good and God's good, and it's all about just how you think it, man. And it is so true that how you think and what you think is what you're gonna kind of create
Sure.
for yourself. I think the quote is, whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. So for anyone who is listening, if there's any parts of my story that they can identify with and be able to empathize with and connect to, I want them to use that, and to be able to, for me to be able to convey the message through that, that life is so good and God is so good, and thinking your way is how it's done. And the thought that is constantly, just kind of bouncing around in between my head, that keeps me in a place that allows me to really just be able to, do everything that I can to create for myself a soul that is going to be recognizable in an afterlife. And that is to just make sure that I'm just constantly keeping my focus and attention on love, and just for people to start learning more about what love is and how to be that, and how to accept that and how to give that. So that's my little piece there that I want to get in.
Absolutely, and we'll end it on that note. We appreciate everybody joining us for another episode of Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Cliff. We'll talk to you next week.
WFON
and W292 EV Marietta,
a Dickey broadcasting station,
live from the Wellstar Health System Studios,
1230 and 106.3 FM, The Sports X.